I feel like this knowledge should have been in my brain already, but somehow it wasn't there. Romances are really the modern fairy tales, aren't they? It didn't leave me fully satisfied, I must admit. I was hoping a bit more from the ending. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Hi, so in this video I want to speak about the books that I read in April. I'm going to categorize them in my very three official categories, which are: this book is not for me, this book was a great one-time read, and I will happily read this book again. So the first one that I want to speak about is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. I first downloaded the audiobook. The audiobook is about 5 hours long. The book is about 200 pages. And I listened to it on the way to work every day and back home. So the book is set on the International Space Station. We follow the life of these 6 characters basically throughout one day. So one day on the International Space Station means that you get to go around the Earth 16 times, and this is how the book is built on these 16 orbits, which first of all is a thing that I didn't know. I feel like this knowledge should have been in my brain already, but somehow it wasn't there. One maybe word of caution: this book has basically no plot, so if you are someone who needs a strong plot in a book, this is probably not the right one for you. This book is basically poetry, a very long form poetry about imagery of how Earth is seen by these astronauts. There are many lists, and I personally like lists, but when I was reading the reviews, some people really didn't like the list, so something to be mindful of. It's very beautiful, it's very poetic, but it is a slow book, and I think the length is actually perfect, because anything beyond these 200 pages would have probably been too much. So life up on the International Space Station seems very slow. It repeats itself again 16 times in one day. While there is not a very strong plot, there is one element that kind of in a way drives or connects all these chapters. So from the International Space Station, they see that there is a typhoon forming in Southeast Asia, I believe, and they are mandated, obviously it's their job, to monitor the course of this typhoon, to understand how powerful it is and where it might hit. So because we are following this one day in the life of these astronauts, we're really a lot inside their mind. First thing that we really understand is that the distance that these astronauts live between themselves and Earth really manages to show not only the beauty of Earth as a natural planet, but also how it is this one unified thing. Because from up there they can't see the man-made borders that define one country from the next, they only see the natural borders of land and water. But the other themes that I found equally moving is obviously the nostalgia. So these astronauts live these very different lives. When they are up there, it's difficult and it's tough, but also they don't want it to end. And even though they miss their loved ones and they want to see them, there is part of them that would like to stay up there forever. So there will always be this distance between them and their loved ones, because they won't be able to experience anything close to what they are experiencing. There is also this sense that their home is split, because they all have their homes down to earth and they are very close to that, their houses, their food, their traditions, their comforts, their furniture, but then they also have this home up in the International Space Station, which looks nothing like what they left on Earth. The food is not very good, they can't taste anything, it's all very clean and organized. And there was this one moving scene where one of the characters was crying and they had to catch the tears because their fluid is not allowed to just, float around the International Space Station. At the beach hut, they'd been human, a woman, a man, a wife and mother and daughter, and a husband and father and son, and they'd crossed themselves, tapped their nails and bitten their lips in unconscious angst. But when they'd got to the launch pad, they were Hollywood and sci-fi, Space Odyssey and Disney. But listening to the audiobook, I found that it was easy for me to get distracted, and sometimes I just wanted to go back and listen to the imagery again. And So that's why I actually bought a physical copy, and this is why I'm gonna include this book, Orbital, in the third category. I will be happy to revisit this book again. I think the physical copy with a pencil to underline the passages that speak the most to me will be the best choice to revisit this book. Second book of the month, I have read Cinema Love by Jiaming Tang. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Here is the short blurb. For over 30 years, Old Second and Bao Mei have cobbled together a meager existence in New York City's Chinatown. But unlike other couples, these two share an unusual past. In rural Fuzhou, before they emigrated, they frequented the Workers' Cinema, a theater where gay men cruise for love. So I picked up this book because the blurb really drew me in. I got so intrigued by this Workers' Cinema that became a place for gathering in secrecy for queer men in rural China. And interestingly though, the book is mostly set in Chinatown, New York City, with some flashbacks that bring us back to rural China and to the Workers' Cinema. Likewise, the book is, yes, about the story of these queer men who live a double life because they have to hide their real sexuality, but the way I read it, it really focuses more, or at least for me, it was more focused on the wives of these men who, because of their husbands' choices, end up being ignored and betrayed. So one aspect that I really loved by this book was definitely the symbolism of the Workers' Cinema, because in a way it was, yes, a place for love where men could finally experience their true selves in safety and, yes, in secrecy, but they could finally experience the kind of love that they couldn't get anywhere else in society. But it was also a place for betrayal, because effectively a cheating was ongoing in the halls of this cinema and the women were kept out of it. There is one quote, as if spoken by one of the wives, that really struck with me, and it is this. Yes, it was a place for love, and yes, it was the only place where a certain kind of man could love. But it was also, was it not, a place for betrayal, a place where wives were lied to, where wives were humiliated. Though of course they couldn't show it. They had to keep living dignified, proud, and pretend happy lives. So this book is as much about being queer in rural China as it is about being a migrant in New York City. It explores themes like fitting in another culture, poverty and exploitation, not always on the hands of white people, but also at the hands of more successful Chinese people who migrated before. It also highlights the solidarity and the sense of community, specifically of the wives of these secretly queer men who were experiencing a similar kind of betrayal. And in a way, the men's experiences weren't actually that different in New York City than they were in rural China, because they still, to an extent, had to hide themselves. They still had wives who they couldn't love in that passionate way, and they still struggled to recognize each other in the crowd. There is another quote I love where one of these men is navigating this very delicate balance. For 7 agonizing minutes, they spun around each other, dancing a delicate dance that meant happiness if they were on the same page, violence if they were not. It was the exact same performance Old Second had seen and been part of as a young sissy in Maui. So I thought that it was actually quite fitting that the men remained somewhat unclear and maybe unseen to us as the readers. We never see them fully, not in New York City, not in rural China, and this is exactly how their wives saw them. Through cracked doors. They still live with wives, sneak around to find the kind of love that they need, and then live with the guilt of hurting women who they do care about because they do share their lives with them. There is another quote that I found moving about the cost of secrecy. This is one of the wives who is talking to another man who, again, is also queer in secrecy, and she says, I remember how my husband wanted to talk about him, his lover. I could see it in his eyes, a certain kind of glow and eagerness. Why are you telling me this? Replies the other man. Because now I realize how lonely it is not to talk about the people you love. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. For me, the issue was a little bit the structure. It jumped around quite a bit between timelines and between characters. Especially at the beginning, there was really a multitude of characters, often referred to just as nicknames, and I struggled to find exactly who the main ones were that I needed to follow. But then as the story progressed, it does zoom in on the main ones. Still, it remains a horror book, so we do get a multitude of stories and perspectives, which I really, really liked. I was still a bit unsure how much time had passed by the end. So by the end, we get to COVID, so we know that we are in our days, but I had no idea, for example, how old the characters were by the end of the story. And the ending too, it didn't leave me fully satisfied, I must admit. I was hoping a bit more from the ending, but still, it was a wonderful debut. It's the first novel to be published by this author, and for me, it sits comfortably into the second column of my very official grading system, which is a wonderful one-time read that I'm really glad I could enjoy. After I finished listening to Orbital on the way to work, I wanted to pick a lighter audiobook for my daily walks to the office and back. I picked a romance, which is not one of my usual reads, but I felt like it. So I picked Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I hope I'm pronouncing this one correctly. Romances are really the modern fairy tales, aren't they? And this one kind of follows the classic Cinderella trope, only that here is inverted because the girl is the more wealthy and established one and the guy is the struggling one. The plot unfolded exactly how I expected it. I think years of watching rom-coms kind of conditioned my brain to expect all the twists and turns of most of these romance stories. There were really no surprises for me in the plot, but still I really enjoyed it, and I think mostly I enjoyed it because of the writing. The language was really fluid. I don't know, I'm not a big reader of romance, so I can't say if this is valid for the entire genre, but for this book at least, I felt that the dialogues were the most prominent aspect. There was of course a lot of time spent in the head of the two main characters, in their thoughts, and sometimes this could get a bit repetitive on how much they were in love with each other and things like that, but there was not a lot of time spent on like lengthy descriptions and things like that, so it really flew along really easily. And the language of the dialogues, honestly, I really enjoyed. I found it very credible, and especially the conversations that the two main characters were having with their friends were so relatable. I felt like these were probably real conversations that the author must have had. Their backstories, families and friendships added the right amount of depth to the story. There was a touch of magical realism in the sense that the natural world seemed to respond, especially in the second part of the book, to what the main characters were doing. And yes, at times maybe it was a little bit over the top, but hey, this was a fairy tale at the end of the day, so I thought it fit quite well. Also, the ending really worked for me. The build-up was solid, and I think the ending really delivered, and at the end of the day, what we really wanted to happen did happen, and we do get that big satisfaction at the end, as any good romance I think should deliver. So this was actually the second book that I read by this author. My very first romance book, I think in my entire life, was Yours Truly by the same author, which as I found out, it's set in the exact same universe as Part of Your World, only that explores the story of one of the characters who, in Part of Your World, she's a side character, she's the best friend of the female lead. As I said, I'm not a huge romance reader, so I don't think I can't really say how this book really positions in the genre, but I can say that I really enjoyed it, and for me, again, it falls into the second category of one-time read that I truly, really enjoyed. And here we are with the last book of the month. So the last one I read is Yellowface. I will not spend a lot of time on it because I feel like I'm super late at the game. Actually, it's a testament to the fact that I probably live under a rock, because I managed to read it after all this time without any spoilers. I had no idea what the story was about when I started, so that was awesome, and I read it very quickly, just in a few days. It was really a page turner, and I got to the end and I didn't love it. First, the positive things. I love unreliable narrators. This is like a complete train wreck that we follow from start to finish, and we know it's gonna go immensely bad, and still it's gut-wrenching every single page. So I thought that was really well done, and I couldn't stand the character, which means that it was a really good character, because you are supposed to hate it with every page. So kudos there, really well done. But still, there were a few things that unfortunately prevented me from loving this book, and a bit it was the prose. It felt like, it didn't feel like a final draft. The language wasn't really polished, it wasn't super tight, and I was a little bit turned off by that. And another thing about the prose is that I really felt the presence of the author a bit too much, and this is something that I thought also with another one of her books, which is Babel, I think that's how you pronounce it. And I thought that it was a bit too heavy-handed, in the sense that she really wanted to make sure we knew what she was thinking, and she would over-explain some facts and some concepts to us, and I think she should have more faith that her readers are smart and they understand the point. Like, we get it, we know what's going on. The story is well crafted enough that we get the point without this over explanation. And then it's the characters. The main character of June, obviously we are inside her head, so she's the one that is best characterized, best structured, best explored. I felt that most of the other characters were really just playing a role, and they weren't really real people, they were just functional to make a point. And I really wish we could have seen more of Athena in a bit more of a three-dimensional way, because I thought actually exploring their friendship, this super passive-aggressive kind of fake but kind of real friendship between the two of them, could have really elevated the book more. For me, the book was too much in the cyberspace, so like I understand the point, but literally everything kind of happened on Twitter. I personally don't use it a lot. I actually got overwhelmed with social media a few weeks ago and I deleted everything from my phone. I'll go back to it eventually, but that's to say that then I made that decision in my life, and then I opened this book and it's all these horrible people writing horrible things on Twitter and like fighting with each other and arguing, and I was like, wow, okay, that's exactly what I was hoping to escape. So I wish there was a bit more story that happened outside of the cyberspace. And at the end, I thought we were almost there, and this is where actually I want to speak about the end, so this will be a spoiler, so feel free to leave the video here, and thank you so much for watching this far. But for the ending, I thought that was the moment when the story would leave the cyberspace and have some real, tangible effects in real life. I thought she was going to kill that other girl that I forgot the name of. And I was really hoping, so it would be like a full descent into madness, and then it would have a real life, strong effect, catastrophic effect. And then the second best for me was when we see her fly off the stairs. I thought she was going to die. And I thought that also would have been descend into madness, pick this insane fight, and have a real tangible effect in real life, which it also goes full circle from the start of the book with Athena dying. But no, neither happened, and so I was really disappointed in the ending that it was just like more of the same. So we continue rewriting narratives in the cyberspace, we continue telling the stories and unraveling stories and telling new stories, and pretty much that's it. So I thought that was kind of a bummer. I think, I don't know, I was hoping that the ending would redeem the book a bit for me, but unfortunately it didn't, so I'm gonna have to put it into the first category of not really the book for me. And yeah, but I know that it's so loved, so it has so many fans, so definitely it's my own personal opinion. So thank you so much for joining this April Reads video, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao!